When I say Mello and Cobee, who do you think about?
Oh, it's easy. LaMelo Ball and Kobe Buffkin. No, I'm kidding. It's Carmelo and Kobe Bryant.
Well, I'm going to tell you about a Mello and a Cobee that Arizona State fans need to be aware of in 30 seconds. Happy Tuesday. It is officially October. Welcome to the PHNX Sun Devils show, coming to you live from Studio K, presented by Circle K. Guys, join Inner Circle for free by downloading that Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details. I am Anthony Totri, joined by the return of the hall monitor, Erik Ruby.
You know, it's tough when you can't say as always.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. You just got to go
tough.
back-to-back days. That's all. That's all.
Just things out of my control.
Yeah,
per
man.
usual.
Yeah, busy.
But just grinding away over here at PHNX. But glad to be back. It's game week.
It is, and we've got Captain Redbeard steering the ship behind the Mac as he always does. Jam-packed show today. Do us a solid. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. Drop a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. Say what's up in the chat because we do have a loaded menu for everybody today. We have got a very, very familiar Kansas reporter that's going to be joining us at the tail end of the show to talk Jayhawks, so definitely stick around for that. We're going to hear from Kansas head coach Lance Leipold, what he had to say about the Arizona State Sun Devils. Spoiler, he's a sad man. He's kind of like you hear his voice and you're like, oh, I kind of feel bad for Lance. Yeah. I mean, he's got 2 L's in his name and his team's got 4, so it's tough. It really is tough for the guy.
When did you think about that one? You were up late last night, you're like, ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, no, just kind of
same thing as October.
Yeah, October. Saw that one on Twitter. Got to be honest with you. Also, we are going to get into Arizona State's offense going up against that Kansas defense. Connor Smith in the chat. What winning percentage does ASU have against Kansas this weekend? Off the dome, what do you got there?
We're asking for our winning percentages?
Just quick percentage 65. Off the cuff. 65 for ASU?
Yeah.
I'm going to go 70. I feel good about this one.
I know you do, and I'm not saying I don't feel good, but I felt good about Tech too. So.
That's fair. No, that's fair. That is fair.
Do we want to know ESPN's?
ESPN's is probably like right on the cusp of like 52 or something.
56.9% ASU.
Yeah. BC in the chat. Go Sun Devils. For you, before we get too much into the Arizona State offense versus Kansas defense, what's the hesitation? What are you feeling?
It's
okay. We can have a quick little therapy sesh before.
You know, I don't know if I'm just in my pessimist bag as of late. It's just I need to see this team dominate this game.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas was supposed to be good.
Correct.
And what this can't be is a get-right game for Kansas. But something in the back of my head is like, is this a get-right game for Kansas? I still think ASU will win. Spoiler alert, when we get to our predictions, I'm going to predict ASU to win. I do believe they moved to 4-1 on the season. But if they had a better showing against Tech, I would be more confident. But coming off of a not great showing and a loss, then you have a bye week. I need to see how they respond. And if they come out here and they dominate Kansas, then my perspective has shifted a little bit. But if it's close or if they lose, I think that says a lot about this team. So I think 65% is a pretty fair call. To me, it's like more so than what I would say an average person would think ASU has a chance with, but a little bit less than you. I think 65 is a sweet spot.
I mean, you've got a 1-4 team going on the road, taking on a 3-1 team, fresh off a bye. And this is a 3-1 Arizona State team that is getting back a lot of guys. You're getting Raleek Brown back. You're getting Jacob Kongaika back. You are getting Zach Swanson healthy. Sounds like cornerback LaTerrence Welch will be back. Sounds like Tate Romney should be good to go as well.
That's big.
You are getting really the bulk of your team
and your defense.
Back. Your defense, you're fresh now because you've had that week off. You're getting Prince Dorba at what you'd expect to be a full go. Sean Na as well. along that offensive line, something we didn't necessarily talk too much about on yesterday's show. But that is going to be, I think, a big part of this game. And I'm going to be honest, I think there are a lot of different players that you could point to that should have an impact on, returning to this Arizona State lineup. I don't think there's anybody that's going to have a bigger impact on Saturday, more so than Raleek Brown.
I hope, because when we did see Raleek out there, again, for very limited time this season, wasn't that great.
Yeah.
Wasn't that great. So I really hope that you're right. I'm obviously rooting for it, and I hope he can give a new layer to this offense. Defensively, before we move on from this, getting back all of that might just be the answer. That might be the fix for what was wrong in Tech, is you just get a pure amount of your defensive line and your secondary back. That's great.
Yeah.
Then that might be enough to beat Kansas in its own right, let alone adding a Raleek Brown. So the health does make me feel more confident. I would be probably at a 60% if they weren't fully healthy. I am just in the mode of I need to see them play football. It's been too long. Let the sour taste in my mouth with the last one.
You got to flush it, man. You got to flush it the way the team does.
Okay, it's flushed, but I was going to make a terrible analogy.
Dear God.
I don't even know if I can do it. I can't do it.
Is it like...
I can't do it.
Does it have to do with the D-backs, or what does it have to do with?
Nope. It has to do with flushing.
Okay. Yeah, we don't need to get too much into flushing. I'm okay on that.
Can I whisper it in your ear?
Sure, you can whisper it in my ear. Yeah, no, we're good.
Should I say that?
No, we're okay.
Okay. All right. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
It's all good. B's in the chat.
Maybe I'll say it in our Discord.
It can't just be running the ball. Teams have adjusted to that. Time for ASU to counter that and respond accordingly. Connor Smith in chat. Play mistake-free football. B's again. Smooth operation. Clean performance. Sounds easy.
Yeah, they should win this game as long as they don't shoot themselves in the foot.
Exactly. And that's something that Kansas has done a number of times.
They don't have any feet left.
They don't have an FBS win this season, which is crazy to think about. A team that was starting the year in the AP Top 25. Both of us had them as a real threat in this conference. And their only win this season came against FCS Lindenwood, 48-3 at the start of the season. Every other opportunity for them this year has really, really kind of they've squandered it in a number of ways, offensively and defensively. But I do want to get into that Kansas defense going up against the Arizona State offense. And I think this week more so than previous weeks, you are going to really see an emphasis on the speedsters on this Arizona State offense. I think Jake Smith is in for a big game. I think we are going to see a little bit more Xavier Guillory. I think there's room to see Caleb Black as well. A younger wide receiver who is one of the faster guys on this team. And then, of course, I think a guy in Raleek Brown who has that burst, that short area quickness, I think is going to be huge against a Kansas defense that plays a lot of man coverage. This is a team that has really, really good athletes in Mello, Dotson, of course, and then Cobee, Bryant. A lot of people want to talk about Cobee, and that's fine. But Mello, Dotson has been one of the best coverage corners all year long, not just in the conference, but in the nation. Again, I believe tied for second or third in interceptions nationally. And then, of course, he leads the Big 12 with 3. They've got some freak athletes in that secondary.
Well, I mean, if you look at speed as well, Cam Skattebo's in that conversation, even though he's a little bit more of a power back. But Sam Leavitt, this might be a huge ground game for Sam Leavitt, especially since their secondary is very strong.
Yeah.
Right. You already saw Sam struggle in the passing game against Tech. You would still like to see him get involved and like to see him get into a rhythm. I think it was, William in the chat says just need Leavitt to get in a rhythm with short passing game early and often. I think that's a great point. But this might be one of those games where kind of similar to how his name is escaping me, but the Washington State quarterback ran all over Tech when they played. This might be one of those games from Leavitt where, hey, we're trying to get it going through the air, but, guys like Guillory and Smith, they're not getting open and they're not able to grab the ball, or it's just not, consistent enough. Running backs and Sam. It might just be ground and pound until Kansas taps out. Yeah, basically.
Could be. And again, this is a team in Kansas that doesn't generate a whole lot of pressure up front. So assuming you are completely healthy along the offensive line, you should have some opportunities for Sam Leavitt to really sit back there and pick apart this Kansas defense. But I do want to get to both a good play from Kansas's defense and not necessarily a great play, more of a better play from the TCU offense.
Zone?
We might be. We might be.
We'll hold off. I need to see if this is freak zone worthy.
If it's freak zone worthy.
Get your freak on, Anthony Totri.
Let's go ahead. Let's throw up the first clip there from the TCU-Kansas game. Now, Kansas completely spread out here. You have an H-back kind of offset from that left tackle. You've got, of course, TCU running back, all-star Cam Cook in the backfield as well. You've got a 4-man front from Kansas, 2 backers, so a 4-2-5, very similar to what Arizona State runs. Got a couple safeties up high. So as it stands right now, they could run the football here, and they would be totally fine. It would be hat on hat, and you could see what you could get. So let's go ahead. Let's go to the next clip here. So plays going. Hoover drops off to pass. They've got time. They have time here. Hoover's got time. And you can see the H-back, who was initially on the left side of the formation, he came across. The linebacker on the right side of that defense, he came across in man coverage. Now, what you can't see is the other linebacker from Kansas's defense. He is sitting more in the middle of the defense. He's cheating a little left based off of where Hoover is looking, his body position. So Cam Cook on the top of your screen, if you're watching live, is open. He is the check down. He is completely open. He's got about 10, 15 yards between him and the backer, and there really isn't anybody else from there. Let's go ahead. Let's go to the next clip where Hoover decides he is going to launch it deep. Now, if you are watching live, again, you could see this. There are 3 TCU players that have ran routes, not the H-back that was stuffed at the line of scrimmage, and not Cam Cook in the backfield. They've got both safeties over the top here. The guy in the middle right at the down and distance marker, he's covered. This is man coverage all the way through, okay? So both of those TCU receivers locked down. You should not throw this pass whatsoever. Hoover decides to throw it, too much air on it, not really enough space here, makes a bad throw, and it ends up getting picked off by the bottom side safety. So a position where Josh Hoover tried to do too much. Didn't take what the defense gave him. He wanted to air it out. He thought his receiver could beat man coverage. He couldn't. Great set by Kansas here. The only real option was for Hoover to hit the outlet. Kansas, again, returned this interception to about the TCU 5-yard line. So a situation where, talking about Sam Leavitt, you need to take what this defense gives you, specifically in man coverage when you have defenders as athletic as Kansas does.
And especially when you have an arm like Sam that is not the most accurate, not the most controlled. It puts yourself in a really tough position. If you're going to be taking shots downfield, we saw it with Tech where, taking a shot downfield is awesome. Texas State when they connect, and then Texas Tech when you connect with the other team, and it's a pick. So getting that intermediate range, and again, they could have just checked it down to Cam Cook, all-star.
And then it's 1-on-1.
And then, you're at least not turning the ball over.
Yeah.
You're at least probably just going to pick up a couple of yards, if that. That's why I'm not going to be mad to see Sam use his legs a little bit more. Yeah. I know that we want to see him evolve in the passing game. However, if he can use his legs, I'm all for that. I'm actually all for him being a little bit quicker to that. And then, of course, the little screen passes, little short passes, getting, Scat involved, Raleek Brown involved. I'd like to even see Jake Smith kind of maybe running some sweeps across.
I think you're going to see a lot of Smith.
I'd like to see him, because it does feel like a lot of the times with Jake, it's like, they're bombing it downfield because he's fast. I want to see just chunk plays. I don't want to take shots to keep them honest, but short, intermediary, like hand the ball off to Cam, hit Raleek on a screen, run a sweep with Jake Smith, like even do a wild scat every once in a while. Just keep them on their toes and pick up like 4 yards. Give me 4 to 5 yards and just move the chains and keep them going chunk. And don't always take these shots downfield. They're going to put you in a position where Kansas, the only way they win this game is if they win the turnover battle, right? If ASU's turning the ball over and getting Kansas opportunities on the road, there's a chance that Kansas can walk away with a win here. And I know that the record is 1-4, but very close games. 4-point loss to West Virginia, 3-point loss to UNLV, and a 6-point loss to Illinois. 11-point loss to TCU, which is a little bit different. But again, we're talking one score, in some cases just a field goal game, and that's completely different. And yeah, they shot themselves in the foot, but that also means they had to be in a position to shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, that's fair.
So don't, like, from that play that you showed, because of how they play defense, because of how good their secondary is, I'm fine with taking shots, but don't test it too much to a point where you're now losing the turnover battle and Kansas gets out to an early lead. Chunk. Keep them honest. Downfield.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. B's in the chat earlier asking if a 4-2-5 is just a nickel defense. It depends if that fifth defensive back is actually a nickel corner or if they opt to run like a 3-high safety look. But yes, Arizona State's base defense is a 4-2-5. Kansas, pretty similar with that type of defense, but they do run a little bit more man coverage than Arizona State tends to run. I do want to show you another play that ultimately is massive credit to the design here, and then also Josh Hoover, just his understanding of this defense and of this play. So again, if you are watching live or if you're listening on audio, there are 3 receivers split to the bottom of the formation. It's an empty backfield, and there's 2 wide receivers split up high. So we've got man coverage immediately. Okay. Now, one thing that you could do in man coverage that they are not necessarily going to do here if they're TCU, but you expect to see Arizona State, and Marcus Arroyo loves to do this, bringing quick players across the formation, get people out of position, get them running early and often, kind of give them a little bit of a head start on a route as well. So we're split out wide here. Let's go ahead. Let's move it to the next clip. Now, you don't even need to worry about the top of this formation, especially if you're Kansas. TCU, this is a designed play. The entire time it is going to one guy. Okay, so the second receiver, I believe he's 18 here in this formation. He is running a quick slant. The guy on the very bottom, he is running a fade. He's just trying to take that, bottom corner out of the formation. So really what this is you are running a 2-on-2 here, or a 3-on-2 if you're TCU. The guy who was closest to the offensive line, the receiver, he is also running what looks to be a fade. The goal there is to try and get the 2 Kansas defenders picked into one another. This is a designed pick play. So he's running a fade, and that wide receiver also in the slot is running a quick slant. And now it is up to Hoover to try and thread the needle there before the linebacker realizes what's going on. That is a tight throw. That is a quick throw. Let's go ahead. Let's get to the next image here. So Hoover lets it go. It's not that great of a pick. As you can see here, number 5 in the Kansas secondary kind of beats it. The Kansas linebacker, he's a tad slow on it, but just look at that window there. Look how tight of a throw that this has to be to beat this man coverage. And this is a designed pick play. This is designed to be a little bit easier of a connection than you would expect normally in man coverage. Let's go ahead and advance it one more time. It does get completed. That is how tight of a window that Hoover threw that. This
it's a good throw.
Ends up being a TCU touchdown on this play. You are going to have to get those types of plays. And more specifically, if you're Sam Leavitt, you're going to have to make those types of throws in those windows to beat a defense that is this athletic.
Kyle hit it. You got to hit it, man. There's no chance. You are now entering Anthony Totri's Football Freak Zone. Listen, you can't get all freaky like that.
I don't know if that was freaky, dude.
I mean,
we were just going looking at the plays.
Anytime you start actually breaking down like the positions and what they're doing and how the play breaks down, I'm not saying that you're like the freakiest of freaks at this time. This is some slight freaking.
I mean, it is
going
October.
on. Yeah, it is. Anyway, the big emphasis on what you said was at the very end when you said Sam's gonna have to make those types of throws.
Yeah,
because that play could have been a pick if that ball was not delivered the way that it was before. And again, it shows up as 7 points for TCU and an 11-point victory. If that throw is a little bit off, a little bit late, a little bit less accurate, Kansas jumps just half a second earlier, that's a pick.
Yeah. And
who knows what that game turns into. Maybe it ends up being just a 1-score game, a 3-point game, a loss like their other ones, but it very easily could have changed for them. Again, if they scored 6 more points in a couple of other games, they would have a winning record.
Yeah.
Right. Again, game of inches as well. You can't give them these opportunities. You can't sleep on them. That's why I'm not super 75, 80%, 90% confident, because this is not a team that's like the worst team that's ever played football. I don't think they're good, but it's not like they're losing by 40 every night.
No.
Right? And they certainly have the ability to make this game difficult on you.
Yeah.
And you're coming off of a game where Texas Tech did that on both sides of the ball, and you were not able to respond like you did against the Texas State. So it's a big test for them. Yeah, Kansas is 1-4, but this is a team that's 3-1, hasn't won a Big 12 game. People are already rewriting the narrative after the 3 wins. Then there's a loss. Now everybody's out on ASU again. You need to not only win this game, but you need to dominate. And in order to do that, you have to take advantage of those types of plays where it's a 50-50 ball and, Hoover delivered.
Yeah, Hoover delivered.
Sam has to deliver too.
He has to, and he's got to do it in crucial moments. If Arizona State is going to take care of business, because this is a team in Kansas that has defensive playmakers to capitalize on plays. Arizona State hasn't played a defense to this point in the season, in my estimation, that has elite level difference makers on the defensive side of the ball. Kansas does, specifically again in Cobee, Bryant, Mello, Dotson. You are really, really going to have to come up big, and again, you're gonna learn a lot about Sam. We've learned already and seen his development through the first couple games of the season. Now you had a full bye week. This, you're going to get probably 15 scripted plays. Arizona State should be able to take care of business on that first drive. And if they're not, they're going to need to adjust and set up Sam in a good position. And I think a lot of that is going to be utilizing the speed. You hear it from coaches all the time. What beats man coverage? It's mesh, which again, mesh, you've just got guys running drags across the middle. It's tough to run horizontally with those level of athletes in this level. So we'll see, because we'll talk tomorrow about how Kansas's offense would like to take advantage of, Arizona State maybe not being able to score quickly or turning the football over.
Yeah, and that's for tomorrow. A couple good comments for right now. William says, should have queued it up before the film breakdown started. Yeah, probably. That would have made more sense. That one's on me, coach. And then B says, I like this film breakdown segment. So did I, Bees. I like it when Anthony Totri gets his football freak on. But what I may be more excited for is to hear just how sad Lance Leipold apparently is. And we're going to get all into the sad sack right after this break. I'm rocking my branded Bills right now.
You are. You really are.
It's so comfy. Sometimes, people assume ad reads and whatever, like it's all fake. Genuinely, the best hats I've ever worn. They're so comfortable. Yeah. And there's so many different types of it. I've had the flat brim ones. Those are the ones that they've been giving out to us. But this one's a little bit more of the curved brim, like the dad hat, but the same material. It's breathable.
There's something you got to tell me, or?
No. But I do have to tell you that this Mesa company is fantastic. Of course, partners with ASU. They're going to help you stand out. They have your own personal custom logos that you can put on their hats as well. Snapbacks, truckers, fitted, beanies, or tees. They have you covered with performance, and they have you covered with style. We're going to have some awesome PHNX merch that we're going to be rocking, and eventually you guys will be able to grab. That is a branded Bills hat, and it's a local company. Plus, they want to get you some money off. Head to brandedbills.com. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order.
Do it. Also, quickly, pull out your phones. I know you all have it. If you haven't already signed up for Inner Circle, you can do it in the next 50 seconds.
I'm going to delete it and I'm going to download it.
Go. All you got to do, go to the App Store, download it, okay? Download the Circle K app. Now, to join the Inner Circle free membership program, all you got to do is enter your email and phone number to be fully enrolled, and boom, you're done. After that, all you need is your phone number to start getting those deals. We're talking about deals including 25 cents per gallon, saving 25 cents per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. And then every single day after that, you could save 3 cents per gallon as well. Plus, there is plenty of other member-exclusive deals and discounts, guys. Enjoy your member-exclusive beverage deal. Inner Circle members like you can get any size Polar Pop or Prospect for just 79 cents. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading that Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for more details.
Boom. Did it. I deleted the app, downloaded it, logged out, logged back in. all in the time that it took you to make that ad read. If that's not the easiest way to save money, then I genuinely don't know what is.
It really is. It really is that easy every single time. BC in the chat just waving. Hi, BC.
Sad sack time.
Sad sack
time.
Before we
Sad
get there,
sack time.
guys, do us a solid. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Drop a 5-star review if you haven't already. Highly recommend you subscribe to PHNX Sports. We have a lot of amazing content already out there and even more coming your way. Obviously, Suns Media Day was yesterday.
That's why I wasn't here, by the way.
Likely story.
I wasn't dipping. I was there listening to 4.5 hours of Suns Media Day. Got the pleasure of doing that, and then was running the Suns show. If you want to give your boy some support, you can check out the Suns Media Day recap on this channel.
Do it. We've also got a lot of PHNX Cardinals content. Obviously, the Cardinals, a tough loss this past weekend. Need to get right against NFC West opponent San Francisco coming this weekend. And then, of course, the Diamondbacks, a bitter end of their season, but nobody has you covered like PHNX Diamondbacks. Went live a number of times yesterday, still going live today to talk about the season's end. And maybe what could have been done differently. So again, subscribe, PHNX Sports here on YouTube. Getting back to Arizona State versus Kansas. We do like to take the time every single week to hear from opposing coaches, opposing players, what they have to say about Arizona State. And Lance Leipold, the Kansas Jayhawks coach, is no different. This is what Coach Leipold had to say about your Arizona State Sun Devils earlier in the week.
Yeah, Kenny Dillingham and his staff done a really nice job in their second year. You can see the improvement that's been made. They got off to a good start. Had a tough, a game. They got the extra week preparation. A lot of weapons. Quarterbacks played well. They got off to a really good start in this season. Jumped out Wyoming right in the first quarter. It's a big plays. A balanced offense gives you a lot of different looks, and defensively, Brian Ward's been there. I've known Brian for a long time. He's an excellent defensive coordinator. Just like we say, week in and week out, it's going to be a big challenge. It's what this conference has become.
He's speaking like he just got caught for a pretty heinous crime. Like he's getting interrogated. He's just soullessly recounting whatever, the bank that he robbed. And then we went through the front door and I put the gun in their face. See, that's what he sounded like. I was like, this is sad.
It was sad.
I'm like, are you need a hug?
Yeah. Are you okay?
Well, I mean, to be honest, would you be happy?
No, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be happy, especially kind of furthering what he said in that press conference, because he was asked point blank if there are, any major changes coming. And he said no. He said this team last year offensively specifically, because offense feels like it's been a little bit more of the problem, right? When you look at the aerial attack. So a team last year that averaged 6.9 yards per play. They average 6 yards per play right now. They're offensively finding ways to move the football. Early in games, they're finding ways to score. They're not finding ways to hang on to leads. Like you said earlier in the show, they're shooting themselves in the foot. And to be honest with you, it starts with Jalen Daniels.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You want to know how you lose? These are their losses: 23-17, 23-20, 32-28, 38-27. Do you want to know why you lose those games? If you're going to just point at one thing, Jalen Daniels, 69, nice, for 130, 805 yards, 5 touchdowns. Here's the kicker: 8 interceptions.
Yeah.
Sam Leavitt has 2 interceptions on the season.
Correct.
Jalen Daniels has 8.
Not ideal.
That's how you lose all these one-score games, is you lose the turnover battle, which is why I said it's important for ASU to not let them get theirs in their own right. But if they can force Jalen Daniels to go out and turn the ball over, you're sitting real pretty. Sitting real pretty. But this is a team where if Jalen Daniels plays like he's supposed to play, we were talking about this guy going to the NFL.
Yeah, we were.
We were saying he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12.
I mean, he has, he has the build for it, and in previous years, I think we've seen that potential where we can look to Jalen Daniels and be like, hey, this guy is, he's built to be an NFL quarterback. He could have that in him. But I mean, you look to, and you bring up the eight INTs. You look at each game this season. They are turning the football over a lot. Yeah. You go back to the Illinois game, which was a meeting between Kansas at the time, was 19. Illinois wasn't ranked at that time. Kansas lost the turnover margin 4-1. You're giving them 4 extra opportunities.
And that's a team that became ranked.
Yeah, you cannot give teams that many opportunities to go out there and score. Again, they lost that turnover margin. You go back to the UNLV game. They lost that turnover margin 2-0, giving it away to, again, a team at the time in UNLV that wasn't ranked. UNLV now inside the AP top 25. And you go back to the West Virginia game, 2 turnovers in that game. West Virginia, funny enough, also turned it over twice. But still, you
West Virginia also famously have been shooting themselves in the foot.
If you don't turn the ball over there,
you win.
You are likely winning that game because you're giving away 2 free possessions. Even if those turn into 2 field goals, you win that ball game.
Yep.
And that's against a conference opponent. Now, that didn't count against conference record, I don't believe. Unless, let's see, I could be wrong.
No, I think
it was a conference game.
It's 3 non-con games, and then we've only played 1 because
did that fall in a non-con or did that fall in a conference? No, that was their first conference game
because that was the same day that we played Tech.
You're right. That's my bad on that end. And then you go back to the TCU game, which again, they won the turnover margin for the first time all season, 3-1. And they ultimately lost that game.
Their largest margin of the season.
Yeah, by the largest margin of the game. I would love to know, and this is going to be tough, I guess, to try and find out, but when that interception occurred,
TCU's interception?
No, when Kansas's interception occurred. Oh, here we go. So Kansas's interception occurred. Oh, it was the last possession of the game.
So you're already down 11.
You're already down 11 at that point.
So you were up 3-0 in the turnover margin,
and you found a way to lose,
and you still lost by double digits. That's tough.
Yeah, that's not ideal. But the Kansas offense wasn't really able to do a whole lot. And then special teams, they lost that. Gave up a punt return for a touchdown to
That's
TCU.
The game right there.
You're going to lose that. There are just, again, so many opportunities that you have to take advantage of in these types of games, in conference games. And I know, like, a lot of people say, hey, guess what? Kansas, they've won games in the past as a unit because this is a pretty experienced team. They've been with Lance Leipold. But when you start the season 1-4, man, like, it's easy to be a media member. It's easy to be a fan and say, hey, you know what? This team is going to figure it out, right? If I say, hey, Erik, you've had 5 weeks of work.
Okay.
The first week, a great week. You won that week. You had a phenomenal week.
I went off.
The last 4 weeks, you've had really good starts to the day, but every single day in the last 2 hours, you found a way to screw something up and have a bad day. When you get to that 6th week and you do it that 6th day, whatever, when you start to get to that point in the day where you've got 2 hours left, you start to get in your head a little bit. It's easy to be on the outside and say, hey, just flush it, right? Have a good day.
Sure. It's human nature.
Yeah.
It's human nature. The yips are a real thing.
They are.
They are a very real thing. I mean, have you experienced the yips in your life?
I have, actually.
Yeah. Kyle, have you experienced the yips in any facet in your life?
Yeah.
True. No, it's real. And it could be like the most simple thing. Like, I know somebody who gets the yips when they park.
Is it your wife?
No.
Okay.
No.
I thought you were just doing her a favor by not saying.
No. Like, getting the yips is a real thing. Like, when it comes to sports, you just pick up basketball, right?
Yeah.
And let's say you airball 2 threes in a row. Next time you catch the ball to shoot a 3,
it's in your head a little bit.
You're going, That was your boy at our men's league game last week.
It's tough.
Hit the first 3, nothing but net. Guy said that's too deep. I said some expletives at him after I made it.
Yeah, that's
Then
fair.
I made a layup. Then I missed my next 4 shots. Pretty tough. And then I shot it again, and I was like, ugh. Like, I didn't feel confident. So it's the same thing in football where, like, you're up 7 points and it's the 4th quarter, and you're almost thinking to yourself, what are we gonna do here?
Yeah. And if you're Jalen Daniels, you're taking a snap on 3rd and 10, right? And like you said, you're up in the game. Let's not turn it over, right? Let me find the man. Let me not try and do something, that I don't need to go out there and make a crazy play.
Right. at the same time, though, with ASU, you know that this team is turnover prone, and you know that they almost simply can't win if they don't win the turnover battle.
And what has Arizona State done really good for the first 3 weeks of the season?
Turned the ball over.
They've taken it away.
They've taken it away on defense, and they've turned that into scores.
Yeah,
as well. I mean, the most infamous one they didn't turn into scores was the Texas State Xavier Alford pick that ended up being a 3-and-out. However, that still won them the game.
Yeah.
Eventually, just by the time that it wasted. So they know how to capitalize on that as well. Plus, you're returning home where you did have extremely strong performances and beating a Mississippi State because you forced the ball over, the hashtag thick six. Of course, Lance Leipold mentioning the Wyoming game where the second play of the freaking season.
Yeah,
because I used to say you pick six. This is a place that should be rocking. Obviously, I wasn't able to listen to yesterday's show, but I'm assuming you talked a little bit about Kenny talking about that and the incentive and what they're going to be giving fans and student fans for staying. You just have to play good, clean football, and you have to force them not to. And honestly, for this team, most weeks, if you can do that, you have a chance to win, or you should win.
Absolutely.
Utah's a different story where, you could play good, clean football. If they play good, clean football, you're
Don't look past Kansas to Utah.
But Kansas, you just need to be confident in yourself, but not overlook them. The same thing that you did with Wyoming, the same thing you did with Mississippi State, and honestly, the same thing you did with Texas State. But this time you're at home and you're at a team that's reeling, and you can send them to 1-5. But again, last thing that I'll say on this before we can move on. 17 points week 2. I'm not counting week 1. It doesn't count. They played Lindenwood. Like, come on.
In a soccer stadium.
Seriously, they're better than Troy. Kidding. 17, 20, 28, 27. So besides, week 3 to 4 or week 4 to 5, whatever it is, they've gone up as far as offensive output, right? You don't want to continue that trend.
Correct.
You don't want them to get in the 30s, in the 35, 40s, because if Jalen Daniels in this offense, if they find something and they find a groove, they're the same opposite direction of, hey, like they can get in their own head. If they get to the other side of it, that's going to give them such a breath of fresh air and be like, hey, this is who we can be. You can't let them get to that point.
No, you're right. You're right. You absolutely can. And look, we've obviously talked a lot about this matchup. We're going to continue talking a lot about this matchup as the week goes on. But we are going to hear from a Kansas Jayhawk reporter. But we are going to do it right after this break. And I want to tell you how you can snag tickets.
Tell me.
To this ASU Kansas game. You mentioned the Sun Devils. They have found ways to get it done at home. And I looked just the other day. I'm sure Eric's doing it right now. There are tickets less than $40 that you can go to for this Big 12 home opener for the Arizona State Sun Devils. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. What do we got, Ruby?
Guess how much that costs?
Wow, $75.
$75 sideline.
Literally right on the sideline, guys. That's crazy. Game Time Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use that code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time?
Captain Redbeard?
Game time.
Well, you got to keep your head in the game when you're doing your flooring. That's a terrible transition, but it's not terrible. It is our friends over at Empire Today. You don't want to make a decision like this lightly, but you also want it to be easy, quick, and convenient. Well, how can you have all of that in one package? Empire Today has that for you. They can send somebody to your house day of. You say, I want to talk about it. I want to quote. I want to figure this out. They can send somebody there. Or they can also have you use their virtual floor visualizer to see which floors exactly work in your home, apartment, office, business, whatever it is. Empire Today is there to help. And they're not going to guarantee the lowest prices because then they're going to be putting flooring in your home. They wouldn't put it in theirs. And you don't want to cheap out on flooring because it's going to catch up to you, but you do want to save some money. And you could do that by scheduling a free in-home estimate today. And all listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHNX. Some restrictions do apply, but see EmpireToday.com/PHNX for details.
I love it. Of course, we have Wildcat fans just hopping in the chat as they always do. Bear 520 down talking about Cam Rising in Utah. I addressed you yesterday and this is to all the Wildcat fans. So if you want to talk about that, you can do it on yesterday's pod. Go watch that. Go watch Mike Luke. These guys, the Wildcat fans, went missing in our chat for weeks on end. They get one win and they're crawling out of their caves in Tucson. So kind of gross behavior to see. At least keep it consistent, guys. You're either here or you're not. But look, I've done a lot of interviews in the past over the years, and I mean, this one is one of my favorite.
Oh,
simply because I got to do it with an old friend from here at PHNX. So we've, like I said earlier, talked a lot about this game, but I do want to kick things over now to the one, the only David Rodish. We have got a special guest now, David Rodish, a sports reporter from the Lawrence Journal-World, covering the Kansas Jayhawks out there in Kansas. Also, if you are familiar with the history of the PHNX Sun Devils show, David Rodish, long ago, was an intern here at PHNX and was doing all sorts of things here for PHNX Sports. David, we miss you over here, man.
Yeah, I know. Totri, I was actually on the show once before you were even here. I did a post-game show against Colorado basketball for Shane when it was just really him. So I even predate you on this show technically by like a week or so. But
congratulations, David.
Thank you. Yes, I hold that very, very close to my heart.
As you should. As you 100% should. Let's go ahead. Let's get into this matchup. For ASU fans that aren't too familiar with Kansas, obviously the first meeting between these two teams on the gridiron since Arizona State joined the Big 12. I want to start with that Kansas defense because they just have some dogs in that secondary. Mello, Dotson, obviously one of the premier secondary pieces in the Big 12, and then Cobee, Bryant as well. Just what have you seen from those two thus far this season?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Mello, Dotson because, before the season, everybody gives Cobee Bryant the hype that he rightfully deserves. But Mello Dotson is a true ball hawk and is one of the best edges going and getting a ball and returning it for 6. And even last week against TCU, you saw that. Mello Dotson was making good plays on the ball. In this secondary, they've had some struggles this year, I think, a little bit more as a group than what might have been expected going into the year with such premier cornerbacks on the outside. But on any given play, in any given game, they can still go up, make a play, intercept the ball, and change the game. And, against TCU, it wasn't exactly the perfect defensive game, but they still were able to make the plays. They were able to intercept the pass, able to break some of things up. And again, it's going to be a tough challenge for any team when you have two premier NFL future corners on a defense in Mello Dotson and Cobee Bryant.
Despite having some of the best corners in this conference, arguably the nation on the outside, this is a Kansas defense that ranks below middle of the pack in a lot of team statistics. Is that specifically because of a weak linebacker room, a weak defensive line, or really what would you say has led to Kansas not necessarily having an elite level defense despite having some elite level corners?
Yeah, it's just been an awkward year. There is a lot of talent on this roster. They returned a lot of guys. They just haven't been able to really finish. They haven't been able to make the plays consistently that you saw this team make a couple of years ago, and even last year. The pass rush has been a bit of an issue. They were able to get to the quarterback last week against TCU a couple of times, which was a good thing to see, but those sack numbers were almost a little misleading because when you watch the game, they still weren't able to generate a ton of pressure consistently on the quarterback, and that led to TCU just kind of having a lot of time to dice up their secondary, which is obviously that's what the Horned Frogs want to do, right? That's what they do so well. And so it's just been a little bit of everything. I think that pass rush is a big thing. I think they've been trying to do a lot, and they've got a lot of guys who can make that play that are almost on like the cusp of a big breakout game. I think the name By Job is a popular one here in Lawrence about a breakout candidate within the next few games or something along those lines. It's just, again, it's kind of the story of KU football this year, where they have guys who have done it at this level. They have guys who have performed at this level, but for some reason they just can't make the plays seemingly when it matters the most, particularly in the fourth quarter. Plays just break down. Guys just aren't doing their assignments. Things just happen. Tackling sometimes can get a little wonky. In the third, fourth quarter against TCU, there were some bad missed tackles on a 59-yard touchdown that, had the defense held up in that drive, I think KU would have gotten the ball back down one, in some good territory. So you have things like that where, it's not like one central issue where you look at this and say, okay, this is what the Jayhawks need to fix. It's just, man, every week there's just something a little bit wrong happens, and it just kind of, messes everything up, and just the whole defense is just kind of, gets a bad rap because, just a couple of minor things happen here or there that just, really change the game.
Before we go on to the Kansas offense, kind of looking at this matchup for the Arizona State offense versus that Kansas defense, talk about a unit that got kind of picked apart against TCU, tackling issues, whether that be because of a lack of physicality or just kind of lapses in focus. You look to this Arizona State offense, and one of the premier backs in this conference who was all about physicality, Cam Skattebo. Just how do you see Kansas trying to slow down a running back that really leans into contact? You mentioned third, fourth quarter, you see that Jayhawk defense start to fall apart. When it feels like for Arizona State, that's when Cam Skattebo really starts to heat up.
Yeah, definitely. That's obviously an issue. I will say I think speed has been a bigger issue than power, although Cam Skattebo obviously brings a completely different meaning to the word power, and he is even incredibly difficult to tackle, more so than most other running backs or any running back that KU has really seen this year. I will say the less of the outside runs, those have been the real issue, I think, in watching, especially that TCU game last week and some of the other games. I think the speed has been able to kill them, whereas, a more downhill runner might be able to, KU might be able to match up a little more favorably against somebody like that. They have had some linebacker depth issues and just general injuries that have happened. And so I think that'll be an interesting thing to see, just who can play quality minutes, how many guys they can sub in and out. And I think that was a big issue last week and in previous weeks of kind of falling a little bit short and a little bit flat in that third, fourth quarter is, some of those depth guys, or they didn't have quite those depth guys to kind of come in, sub out the starters, get a few good minutes. And that just leads to a more fatigued team. And I think, like you said, with a running back like Cam Skattebo, who can really take advantage of that, that's going to be an issue for KU that they're really going to have to address and work on and figure out an answer for. I'm not quite sure how it'll go, but we'll see on Saturday.
Yeah, the issue with speed, something we talked about a little bit earlier on the PHNX Sun Devils show today. Definitely doesn't bode well for Kansas with running back Raleek Brown coming back this week. Expect to see a heavy dose of Jake Smith, maybe Caleb Black as well, some of the faster guys. Kansas definitely dealing with some speed issues simply because they run a lot of man coverage. That's a tough coverage to play, especially in this conference where you do have some dynamic athletes on the perimeter. But kind of flipping over to that Kansas offense, this is a group that I think heading into this season, a lot of people had some high expectations for, specifically because of that tandem that you have in Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal. What has kind of gone wrong for this Kansas team thus far to only have one win at this point in the season? I think a lot of people kind of really focus in on that turnover margin, David.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned just the one win. Who would have thought that at this point, October 1st, the University of Kansas football would still be searching for its first FBS win. Their lone win was against FCS Lindenwood in week 1 in a soccer stadium. It's just been rough. Again, it's kind of like some of the issues with the defense where it's just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Things just don't work. The team has just had a really hard time finishing. They'll come out in the first drive of the game and in the first drive of the second half. They'll have a beautiful scripted drive that ends in a score. You saw that last week in Jalen Daniels. I think he was like 2 for 2 for like 30-something yards and a touchdown. You're like, oh baby, we're back. And then just after that, it hasn't been hasn't been the same. I think the passing offense has just really struggled. Jalen Daniels hasn't been as accurate as I think, the world has known him to be. I think that's been one of the big strengths of his game is accuracy. I think prior to, other than his freshman 2020 season, he has thrown in the high 60s to 70% completion throughout his career. And now he's in the 50s. Last week against TCU, it was in the 40s. It was, I'm not sure that's exactly where it ended, but it was definitely at least in the 40s for a long period of time. And so it's just, it's funny because, again, these are receivers that he's played with for a long time. Luke Grimm is not a newcomer to this team, Lawrence Arnold or Quentin Skinner. These are guys that have been around, and just the passing offense just hasn't quite been the same. Again, you mentioned the turnovers, 8 turnovers, eight interceptions on the year. That's definitely something that you wouldn't expect of Jalen Daniels before you started this season, but this is just kind of where things are now. I will say that, again, it is a group of players that have won with each other here with this coaching staff. And so you kind of have to you always have to keep that in mind, that at any point, they have the capability of just turning this around, figuring this out. These are not guys that are unproven at this level. Devin Neal is one of the best running backs in the conference, like you said, one of the best in the country. His backup, Daniel Highshaw, does not get talked about enough. I know you mentioned him yesterday on the pod. That was great. He is just an incredible runner. And then obviously Jalen Daniels as an athlete is who he is. He's incredible to watch when he's on, and him scrambling is a lot of fun to watch. But just for whatever it may be, it's a couple things here and there. The passing offense in particular, it just hasn't been the same, and it's kind of really tanked this season in all the really high expectations that the Jayhawks had.
Yeah, this is one of the lowest rated, at least statistically, passing offenses in the conference in Kansas. We talked about it on the podcast the other day. Grimm and Arnold are really the security blankets for Jalen Daniels when he does need to pass. It feels like up to this point in the season, the defensive game plan has kind of been set for Kansas, right? At least if you're the opposition, you load the box, you try and take away Devin Neal, you make Jalen Daniels beat you. If you have, some help in the secondary to take away Arnold and Grimm, there really isn't anywhere else that Jalen Daniels prefers to go. Do you see that potentially being the recipe for success, not just for Arizona State, but for teams really all season long through the first handful of weeks of the season? It's, hey, we're going to take away Devin Neal and we got to make Jalen Daniels try and beat us.
I mean, yeah, they're 1-4. Things haven't quite worked out super well, and obviously they're a team that wants to run the ball and wants to rely on the run, and they've been successful in that. I think KU is a top 15 rush offense in the country. So it's not that Devin Neal, it's not that teams have taken away Devin Neal completely or Daniel Highshaw that run game completely. It's just that when they go away from that, there's really no other game to turn to. I think Luke Grimm has had a strong year. He's been able to make some catches and make some plays. Like you said, same with Arnold. He's been solid for the team. They're gonna go for the ball. They're gonna run the ball. They're gonna have Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw probably carry a total of 30. Have a total of 30 carries a game, somewhere around there, and then you're gonna get a couple of designed runs and scrambles from Jalen Daniels. But yeah, again, you can't. You have to have something else in your back pocket. You have to be able to rely on another facet of offense, especially, if you get down a little bit, if you start having turnovers and then you face yourself, in a couple of possession hole or something along those lines, you need to kind of be able to air it out a little bit. And KU hasn't really shown the ability to do so. Obviously, they're going to try to control the game and to maintain a lead throughout the entire thing and just, run the clock and run the ball. And pound that all game long. But, if things start to get a little hairy, if they start to go down and they have to turn to the pass game, things have not worked well when they've had to do that.
Last couple questions before we get you out of here, David, just in terms of the injuries for Kansas. This is a team that obviously has its bye week next week. Given the way the season has started, I'm sure there are a lot of Kansas fans that want to get to that bye week with an FBS win. Just where is this team at health-wise kind of heading into the final game before the bye week?
Every team is banged up at this point, and that was something Lance Leipold said in the press conference after the TCU game was, they've got injuries, they've got depth problems, a little bit, but, who doesn't at this point in the season? Everybody's dealing with that. This isn't like ASU last year where, they didn't have enough offensive linemen to kick a field goal. They're not quite at that point in the season. But yeah, obviously getting to a bye with a win, kind of, figuring some things out, getting in the win column, especially, in the Big 12 record, that would be huge. I think after the game, the sort of the thing that, the players kind of talked about as to how the mood was in the locker room, Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal, both said they were frustrated, right? They were disappointed. Obviously you come off a loss like that, the season hasn't really worked out, but there's still belief in it. There's still belief in the team. There's still belief in the coaching staff. There's still belief in each other. And I think they're ready to really kind of just set the season right, forget about all the bad stuff that has happened and just get a win, against Arizona State. That would obviously be huge just to kind of turn the morale around on this season. I think they're close. They're closer than what their record tells you. It's been a lot of one-score games late that they've just faltered on. Whether that be just because of a lack of depth due to injuries or whatever. Obviously, a bye week would help a lot of those issues, especially if they can get a win, get some of that morale, that juice back, and then get a little bit healthier before the bye week, before they kind of, finish strong in the Big 12 conference.
It's 67 degrees right now in Lawrence, Kansas. It's set to be about 105 at kickoff when Kansas and Arizona State kick off about 5 o'clock local time, which I don't think that necessarily benefits Kansas. A lot of Arizona State fans, they gripe about some 7:30 kickoffs. That would have probably benefited the Jayhawks if that were the case here, but it is set to be pretty hot. I know Lance said that it was, quote, a dry heat, or it's supposed to be a dry heat, something like that. Do you see that maybe playing a factor at all, at least early on in this game? Again, we just talked about a team that, is still a week away from its bye week, trying to inch closer. A team that gets frustrated third, fourth quarter. They, maybe lose a little focus defensively specifically. Do you see the weather being an issue at all?
This is a veteran roster. This is guys who have played a lot of college football. They've played in a lot of different environments. It gets a little humid here. It gets a little humid in some other places in Big 12 country. Obviously, the weather is something that's going to come up, and it's going to be something that's going to be new for these guys that have never played in Arizona. A couple of players are from Arizona on the KU roster, so maybe they can help give some good advice on stocking up on Pedialyte before the game and getting super hydrated and all that. But at the end of the day, again, this is a veteran roster. This is a veteran team, guys who have done it and played at this level for a long time. That weather might be somewhat of an issue, but I think at the end of the day, that's not going to change too much of the game. They're going to come out and they're going to do what they need to do. They're going to run hard, and no matter the temperature outside.
How do you see this one shaking out, David? Let's be honest. Let's be like, this is a team, Arizona State, coming off a bye week. Got really, really healthy. Going to be returning a lot of guys that missed last week. A team coming off their first loss of the season, first time that they've played a Big 12 home game. Thus far, it's family weekend. Kenny said the other day they're giving out chicken to all the students who stay the entire game. And then Kansas, kind of a complete opposite, kind of limping into the bye week a little bit, set to be hot. But do you see this one maybe being a little bit of a surprise?
I think it'll be a close game no matter what. KU, again, this is a good team. A team that has won with this group at this level before, in this conference. Obviously, ASU is a newcomer to this conference, but this is still a group that can win, that has shown in previous seasons they know how to win a game. It's just so far this year they haven't quite figured it out. They haven't quite put it all together. It's tough to predict that they will win the game, that KU will win the game when they have proven that they have not been able to do that so far this year. But at the same time, again, it's they're not that far off. It's a couple of things here and there It's a couple of plays here and there, a couple of turnovers, make things a little bit differently, a couple of missed tackles, things like that, a couple of, missed throws. And, this team is looking at a very different outlook on their season. I'm not quite sure. I truly am not 100% sure on how this will turn out either way. I'm not convinced either way that ASU gets a win or that KU gets a win. Again, I think it just comes down to who can make those plays late. Is it a younger team that hasn't quite, have the knowledge and experience of winning a lot like ASU, or is it a veteran team who is just slipping and sliding right now, who has shown they can win in previous seasons but have not quite shown that this year? So I think that's going to be a big thing in this game, is who can kind of just make those plays late in the game, kind of just get the win, grind it out, make the tough, dirty moments just to, get a dub. And I am not 100% sure who is going to do that. I think this will be a very good game. I think this will be a close game.
David Rodish from the Lawrence Journal World. Go ahead, give him a follow on social at David_Rodish. David, we appreciate you taking the time, man.
Yes. Appreciate you having me, my guy. It was good to see you. I was so happy about this. Glad my veiled threats after weeks of, as soon as I moved here, I'm glad my veiled threats to you and to Shane worked out.
Only because you're David Rodish. That's why. Only because you are David Rodish. Again, guys, give him a follow on social at David_Rodish. I love that guy. I love that guy so much.
He was big timing you right off the bat.
He was. But look, he had some good stuff to say ahead of that matchup. We, of course, are going to be changing gears, talking about the Arizona State defense going up against that Kansas offense on Wednesday's show. So definitely turn on your notifications so you know when we go live tomorrow. Again, that is going to do it for today's episode of the PHNX Sun Devil Show. Give us a follow at PHNX_Sun Devils across social. That includes Instagram as well. You can follow me on social at Anthony_Totri. You can follow this man right here, the hall monitor, at Erik Ruby. That is Erik with a K. You could follow the man steering the ship toward the Big 12 title game. That is, of course, Kyle, Captain Redbeard. You can follow him at KCoop Sports. We will see you guys tomorrow. In the meantime, though, go Devils and peace.
We all silly like the mayor.